English is spoken in so many countries with so much diversity. There's British, Australian, Kiwi, American, Canadian, and South African English.
Ah, Jesus, you forgot about Irish English, you big idiot.
Oh, right. People sometimes forget about Ireland, or they think it's part of Britain. But Ireland is not part of Britain, not even this part. And the varieties of English spoken in Ireland, known as Irish English or Hiberno English, have their own unique features that set them apart from the varieties spoken in Britain and elsewhere. In both Ireland and Northern Ireland, there are two official languages: English, by far the most widely spoken language, and Irish, or Gaelic, the original indigenous language of the island. It was largely displaced by English during the time of England's colonial rule and suppression. Ireland was first invaded by the Anglo-Normans in the 12th century, making Norman French the language of the ruling class, while Irish was spoken by the natives, and English was spoken by common settlers who arrived from Great Britain. But most of these English-speaking settlers were eventually assimilated into the Irish culture and language, and the English crown lost control of most areas outside of the Pale, which included Dublin and surrounding areas. The English language took more of a foothold after England reconquered Ireland in the 16th century. The English crown confiscated land from the Irish and populated it with English-speaking settlers, and the Irish language and culture were heavily suppressed. Until around the year 1800, the majority still spoke Irish, but English was the prestige language and was necessary for social and economic opportunities, so it was becoming more and more adopted by Irish speakers. Then the Great Famine of the 1840s had a disproportionate impact on the rural poor, leading to a steep population decline, particularly of Irish speakers. Around 1 million people died and 1 million more emigrated. This was an important factor in Ireland's shift from Irish to English. The vast majority of the Irish population now speaks English as a native language and not Irish, but Irish left its imprint on the island's varieties of English. As Irish speakers adopted the prestige language English, the way they spoke it was influenced by their original native language. Keep in mind that most Irish people who learned English were illiterate and had no formal education in English and its grammar, so they naturally didn't follow all of its rules. It's also worth noting that most of the British settlers spoke dialectal forms of English, and Scots, rather than Standard English, so the language the Irish were acquiring was not the standard language to begin with. So some of the features of Irish English originated in various dialects of Great Britain, especially the Southwest and Midlands region, as well as Scots dialects of Scotland. Of course, with the expansion of education and literacy, Standard English began to influence Irish English more. So Irish people adopted dialectal English with influence from Irish, plus later influence from Standard English, and also some unique developments in Irish English. Today, there are several overarching dialects or accents of Irish English, including the traditional dialect of the Dublin area, referred to as Local Dublin, the New Dublin dialect, which is more international in nature and less distinctly Irish, the Western dialect, the Southwestern dialect, and the Northern dialects, or Ulster dialects. There's also a variety of English spoken all over the Republic of Ireland, which is similar to the New Dublin dialect in the sense that it excludes many overtly Irish features. But in this video, I want to focus on overtly Irish features, even if not everyone uses them. Irish English has some distinctive features in terms of accent, vocabulary, and grammar. Accent. There are many Irish accents, not just one, but there are some features that are present in most accents. Let's take the name of the country.
Ireland.
Notice that you can hear a clear R sound. Irish dialects are rhotic, meaning that all of the R sounds are pronounced, at least in most accents. This immediately distinguishes Irish English from most varieties of British English, in which R is not pronounced after a vowel, unless it's followed by another vowel. They say it more like Ireland. Some other features. Voiced the is normally pronounced d, and voiceless th is normally pronounced th.
Thirsty. Are you thirsty? That. There. That thing over there.
The G of ing often isn't pronounced. In other words, ing is pronounced in.
He's fixing that old shed of ours.
This happens in other varieties of English too, but it seems particularly common in Irish English. The diphthong in words like mouth is pronounced ew in Dublin.
Mouth, our, flower, out.
This differs depending on region, as a lot of vowel sounds do, but at least in Dublin, this sound is the norm. The A vowel plus R sound in car is more like ar, at least in the traditional local Dublin accent.
car, garden, start, marble.
The diphthong in choice is more like
Choice.
at least in some accents.
We haven't got any choice in the matter.
These are some general features of pronunciation, but remember that there are various accents. Vocabulary. While Irish English uses mostly the same vocabulary as Standard English, it also has some of its own distinctive vocabulary and expressions. Here are some examples.
Yoke.
Irish people use the word yoke to refer to inanimate objects in general, especially when they can't immediately recall the name of it.
I'm looking for that yoke. The yoke I bought yesterday.
Where I'm from in Canada, we might say thingamajig or thingy. Another Irish word is
Crack.
which means a good time, or news or gossip.
What's the crack horse?
This is like asking, what's up, dude? Also notice that the word horse can be used like dude or bro in North American English.
Bold.
Irish people use the word bold with the meaning of mischievous or disobedient, especially with regards to children. The standard meaning of bold is courageous or daring, which in Irish English extends into daring to break the rules.
He was acting bold in school today.
The use of bold with this meaning is an archaism that has survived in Irish English. This is also the case for
Grand.
Irish people say grand with the meaning of fine, good, or great.
How are you? I'm grand, thanks.
Also notice the abbreviated way of asking how are you.
How are you? Deadly.
Irish people say deadly to say something's awesome or amazing.
That was a deadly concert.
The words lethal and class can be used in the same way, both as adjectives, including class.
That concert was class. That song is lethal.
Irish people might use the word
Ropey.
with the meaning of dangerous or unwell.
This is a ropey area. That sushi made me feel ropey.
A word for house or home is
Gaff. We have a nice gaff on the coast.
a slang expression for the lavatory in Irish English is
The Jacks. You should visit the Jacks before we leave. It's going to be a long drive.
if someone's acting foolish or acting like an idiot, an Irish person might say they're
Acting the maggot.
This can be said in either a serious or a playful way.
Stop acting the maggot, you.
If someone's annoying you, you can refer to them as a head wrecker.
Head wrecker. He's a head wrecker. He never answers when I call him.
You could also say wreck the head as a noun,
He's a wreck the head.
or you could use a verb phrase.
He's wrecking my head. He was acting bold in school today, wrecking the teacher's head.
Irish English has plenty of idioms like this. Here's another one,
Up to 90.
which means very busy or overworked.
I've been up to 90 all week with my exams.
There aren't too many loanwords from the Irish language in Irish English, though there is a handful. One common one is
Sláinte.
this word means cheers. Grammar. There are also some grammatical peculiarities of Irish English, some of which stem back to the influence of the Irish language, and some of which are remnants of early stages of the English language. These features are not always used. They're used to varying degrees alongside their standard English equivalents. Here are some examples. There's a plural form of you.
Yous. I meet yous outside the cinema. I heard yous are planning a trip.
In Dublin, you might also hear a plural possessive adjective
Yizzer.
instead of your.
Give me yizzer plates so I can put them in the dishwasher.
Them.
Them is sometimes used as a demonstrative adjective or demonstrative pronoun instead of those.
Them books on the table is mine.
Also note that sometimes a plural subject takes a singular verb conjugation in Irish English. Books is rather than books are.
Stay away from them kids down the street.
You might hear this same feature in other non-standard dialects of English, which likely came from the influence of Irish English. There's no plural ending for nouns of time or measure.
2 year, 100 mile. I was working there 2 year.
Tis is a common contraction of it is instead of it's. Also, 'twas for the past tense.
'Tis raining outside. 'Twas a good night.
To my ears, this sounds quaint and old-fashioned, like something from a traditional Christmas song or story, like 'twas the night before Christmas, or 'tis the season to be jolly. That's because this type of contraction was common in Standard English in the past, but has survived mainly in Irish English. The definite article the is sometimes used where we wouldn't use it in Standard English. This is probably because of the influence of the Irish definite article, which has a wider range of uses than the English definite article. Standard English, that is. For example, the most of instead of most of, and the both of instead of both of.
I already ate the most of me dinner. Let's invite the both of them to the party.
Using the one with the meaning of the same.
We ended up wearing the one outfit to school.
For some time expressions.
I go to the gym twice in the week.
And there are numerous other cases when the appears where it wouldn't in Standard English. In Irish English, reflexive pronouns can be used on their own with no antecedent, in subject or object position, or as object of a preposition.
Myself and Paul are very happy to be here. Look at this photo. Here's myself.
Another characteristic of Irish English is its different ways of expressing the perfect aspect, though the Standard English way is used as well. Maybe the most noticeable is the after perfect, consisting of after plus ing or a noun phrase.
I'm only after finishing work.
Meaning, I've just finished work.
We're after getting home from Cork.
Meaning, we've gotten home from Cork. This is one feature of Irish English which I really found confusing the first time I heard it. There's also the indefinite anterior perfect, like, were you ever in, instead of, have you ever been to.
Were you ever in France? Yeah, 3 times I was in France. You heard that story before, did you?
Rather than Standard English, you've heard that story before, have you? There's also the extended now perfect, to express an action that began in the past and is continuing now.
No, I'm not working here long.
Rather than Standard English, no, I haven't been working here long. The be perfect. In this form, the auxiliary is to be rather than to have.
All of them are left already. The people are gone mad.
This type of perfect can only be used with intransitive verbs, because otherwise you'd have sentences that can be confused with passive sentences, like this. The tourists are all eaten now. Irish English also has some interesting ways of expressing habitual aspect, in other words, actions that you do regularly. One way is by using do plus be.
They do always be losing their keys.
Another way is by using the S inflection when it otherwise wouldn't be there.
I goes every Wednesday.
In Irish English, embedded questions can be asked without inversion.
I wonder, is it better to call or to send a DM?
Rather than I wonder if it's better. The lack of if in the sentence likely reflects the fact that in the Irish language there are no embedded questions with if or whether. Irish English sometimes uses resumptive pronouns in relative clauses. Rather than explain what that means, let me just show you.
Over there is a field that we used to play in it. This is the show that I used to watch all the time.
If you can't hear the word it in the sentence, that's because the speaker is pronouncing the T as a glottal stop between vowels, which is common in North Dublin accents. In Standard English, this would be play in and watch, without it. This most likely comes from the influence of the Irish language, which has resumptive pronouns just like this. Resumptive pronouns are becoming less and less common in Irish English these days, but are sometimes still used. The word and can introduce a subordinate clause instead of while.
The phone rang and I was eating me dinner.
Rather than while I was eating my dinner. In Irish English, the syntax of a sentence sometimes changes to mark the focus or topic of a sentence. One way is through fronting.
The rainbow bar, they call it.
Without fronting, it would be, they call it the rainbow bar. In this case, the name of the place is the focus, so it moves to the front of the sentence.
Drank all night we did.
Without fronting, it would be, we drank all night. In this case, the verb phrase drank all night is fronted, because the focus is on the activity of drinking. And because you can't have the subject sitting all by itself with no verb, the meaningless do is inserted, as did. Another way of showing focus is with clefting, using it to turn a single clause sentence into a two-clause sentence. This is done in a certain way in Standard English. It's an apple that she's eating. Without clefting, this would be, she's eating an apple. In this sentence, the object an apple is emphasized, because we already know she's eating something. But in Irish English, you can do this with a verb phrase too.
'Tis raining it is.
Without clefting, this would be, it's raining.
'Twas always danced there, she did.
Without clefting, it would be, she always danced there. I'm sure you can see that Irish English has numerous features that set it apart from Standard English and other spoken varieties of English. But I'm sure there'll be Irish people who watch this video and say, we don't say that. That's because there are various shades of Irish English, if you will. There are regional differences and differences depending on the level of formality, and differences based on socioeconomic status and the way people want to express their identity. In this video, I tried to focus on common features that you'll likely hear in Irish English, even though you won't always hear them. If you're a speaker of Irish English, to what extent do you use the features in this video, or other uniquely Irish features? Are there any other Irish words or expressions you'd like to share with us? Write them in the comments down below.
What are you drinking?
Prosecco?
Jesus, it's far from Prosecco, you were weird.
Prosecco, or Prosecco, is a type of sparkling white wine named after a place in Italy. Here you see another example of clefting to show focus. Without clefting, this would be, you were reared far from Prosecco. This reply is an example of what the Irish call begrudgery, teasing someone for behaving in a way that seems above their perceived social class. So it's basically like saying, what are you drinking that fancy wine for? You're not that fancy. Begrudgery has historically been an element of Irish culture, but from what I hear it's becoming less and less common, which is probably a good thing. A special thanks goes out to all of the Lang Focus Patreon supporters who make videos like this possible, especially the ones whose names appear on the screen. They're the top tier Patreon supporters, so let's give them a round of applause. If you liked this video, you might also like my video on the Irish language, or you might like to see more videos about different varieties of English. If so, check out my playlist on the English language. Whichever you choose to watch next, I'm sure you'll find it fascinating.